Okay, so NBA Finals. You, the Cavs, the first time. What do you remember?
Just being in the finals and the circus that goes along with being in the finals was interesting. It was just, I guess, everything changes. You can't use your own practice facility. You got media everywhere. It's a lot of time constraints. I remember that, and just the attention. I mean, to realize you're the last two teams standing in basketball at the time was interesting, and just the shift in the series. We went really small. I kind of played a lot early, and then towards the end of the series didn't play a lot. And I think just understanding that, it was hard at the time when Steve said, look, we're not going to start you. You're going to play limited minutes. We want to go small with Draymond at 5. The numbers look much better. And they didn't really have a scoring big, whereas the series before with Memphis, with Zebo and Gasol, I was playing 30 minutes and guarding those guys because they were big threats in the post. So it took a bit to understand, but once I did, I had a ring on my finger.
Okay, one of the big memories in that series was Delhi was great the first couple of nights, right?
Yeah.
But Delhi all of a sudden got this reputation of being a little bit dirty. And, like, Delhi's your boy, right? Now, look, Delhi is probably a little bit – but, I mean, if you want to be a backup point guard in the NBA, right, you got to be willing to get dirty, right? You got to be willing to be a little bit more physical. You have to change the pace of the game. So he's not in the NBA if he's not tougher than a $2 steak. But as a guy who, I know he's your competition, but he's also your friend, and you're watching now, everybody's talking about him like he's some dirty player. What was that like?
I hated Delhi during that series. Even though he was my friend, like, I think when you're in that moment, he's my enemy till the national team, which was a couple of months later. So he had a hell of a series the first couple of games, but he was a guy that hadn't played a whole lot of minutes in the regular season. I think he was playing 15 a game, 10, 15 a game maybe. Then all of a sudden Kyrie goes down, he's playing 35, 40. And they got back to Cleveland after game 3. He ended up in hospital. He went into full cramp mode where he couldn't stand up. They had to take him in the ambulance to hospital, give him IVs. So he was under the pump, and I think he blew his load those first couple of games. I think he really did, just because he was playing. He was obviously you're never going to really shut down Steph, but he did a good job just being there, running off screens, being in his body. But that takes a toll, man. And you got me and Draymond moving screens, hitting you, and yeah, I mean, he locked up after 3 or 4 games, and once that was done, they didn't really have enough to get over the line.
It's interesting. They left. They kept leaving Iggy open in the corner, right? He was the guy that and he made it, and that's how he became the finals MVP. And so I'm sure there's at least part of you as you sit there now, like, I got a ring, it doesn't matter. But like, fuck, I mean, if I'm wide open, I can make that shit too, right? How do you process I played less, we won? It's that you got a ring, but you didn't, at least in the finals, you didn't get to contribute as much as you wanted.
Oh, like I said, it hurts a little bit to an extent where you're in the moment. You're like, man, like, I was a starting center on a team that won 67 games and got to the NBA Finals, but the move worked, right? Like, I can't be bitter about it. We were down, I think, 2-1 at that point, and a big game 4 in Cleveland, and made the adjustment and never looked back. So I still got into the game, I think game 4, a little bit in game 5, and just try to, I guess, play that role as best you can. But it was a frustrating day when you get told, because you never want to hear that. And look, to be honest, I wasn't playing fantastic those first couple of games. And the analytics and the numbers of our death lineup, that small ball 5, Draymond at the 5, the numbers don't lie. So once we played that for 30, 35 minutes, and Andre had a hell of a series guarding LeBron, it all kind of changed.
All right, speaking of LeBron, and Andre, was doing an unbelievable job on him. What was your opinion of LeBron at that point?
He was a guy that we had to kind of stop. He had a hell of a series. He put up crazy numbers in that series, and we knew that, we got to a point where, he's a fantastic passer and playmaker. We weren't overly concerned with him going for 30, 35, 40, to be honest with you. We were more concerned with him having a stat line like 25, 14, and 10, because other people would then be involved, and then late game, it changes the way we blitz things or guard things or double things. When it's just one guy, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of game plan for late game. Whereas if everyone's feeling good about themselves into a fourth quarter, it changes. And that was an issue we had with Mark Jackson. He was an old school coach where it would be whoever scored last possession, we're going back to them till the well runs dry. That was his mentality, right? Problem with that was if you're Harrison Barnes or Andre Iguodala and you're in the corner spot and you don't touch the ball for 15 straight trips, and then you get to a late game, let's say Steph's got 30, 35, you get into a fourth quarter and the team starts getting the ball out of Steph's hands, it goes swing, swing, swing to Harrison Barnes, wide open in the corner, very important shot to either put us up to or keep us in the mix, and he just touched the ball, hasn't touched it. That's a harder shot in basketball to make, in my opinion. You go back to how you said, you're wide open, you should make it. In that instance, it's a hard shot because you haven't felt like you're you haven't felt like you're in the rhythm of the offense. You haven't felt like you've been involved. And it's like, hey, Harrison, hey, Andre, you better make this shot. It's just like, so that's where I think with LeBron in that series,
that's how people defend him a lot. Like, remember a couple years ago when the Pacers, his last year in Cleveland, when the Pacers almost beat him. Like, that's what they did. They were like, hey, man, you're going to beat us? Go ahead. And it almost worked. Like, they didn't have a very good team. But because they made LeBron, one, he gets tired because you get way more tired trying to score every time down. Yeah. And then two, other guys are not nearly as engaged when they're not touching the ball. And it's a philosophy. It's one of the things that I think skews his numbers so much that people don't understand. They look at his numbers like, yeah, but that's because they wanted him to score a little bit, maybe not as much as he did, but you want him to score because it isolates him, it freezes out other dudes, and it wears him down. Like, it is a philosophy that does work.
It does. And like most teams, if you don't have good role players that are involved throughout a game in a playoff series or a final series, someone's going to manipulate that and try to make, we'll live with, like I said, LeBron having 40 and making sure that his assist numbers are down so other guys aren't involved. Then we can make that adjustment late game in a big possession.
Okay, so you win a championship. You win 67 games. How much did things change for the team, for the guys, like their personalities? Now that you take all those guys take a different level of stardom. The next year you get back together training camp. How much did stuff change?
It changed a fair bit. I think the pressure even went up, to be honest with you, because our expectation now went up. That second year where we won 73, we went into every game with an expectation of winning, and it was. I think ratchet it up where you think it'd do the opposite. You think you've got your chip, you can kind of calm. We had a sense of calm within games where we'd be down 10, 15 and we'd never really panic. But if we lost one game until our next game, it was hell. And we won, we only lost 9.
You lost 9 games. Think about that, okay? You lost 9 games in an 82-game season. I can't even imagine what.
And it's, the fact that we couldn't cap it off is probably the most disappointing part because it's kind of forgotten about a little bit. But we had a phenomenal year. And we had probably 10 games that regular season we shouldn't have won. When you looked at a three-quarter time score or a half-time score, we were down like 10, 15 points. And then, sometimes we put in Mo Spates and he'd score 10 straight for us. We just had so many different things we could go to. And it was just a fun process, but it was also, I felt like the pressure was up even more because we kept ourselves so accountable where, after a loss, it'd be to the extent of, man, Bose, why didn't you box out that play? No, what fuck? Or Steph, you're wide open, like you should have hit that. Or, why didn't you make the right play? Why didn't you rotate on defense? Like we'd be overthinking that shit because we were so competitive wanting to win. That you'd almost want that next game to hurry up and come because it was like those 3 days between were not fun at all.
Okay, so you get to the NBA Finals. Well, now it's the Cavs again, and they're kind of reloaded. Now Kyrie's healthy, so it's a little bit different. What was this one like as opposed to the previous one?
Well, in a whole, it was just a massive swing. It just shows you that a 7-game series, anything can happen. We felt like we had probably had it won, which, we blew them out basically 3 out of the first 4 games. It wasn't, the first 2 games at home weren't even close. They got us, was it game 3 they got us. And then we come back for game 5 up 3-1. And we thought we were in a great position. Obviously, even looking at the numbers historically, the numbers said that most teams that are up 3-1 win. We kind of changed the trajectory of that. But yeah, it just all turned. Game 5, I still remember it. LeBron gets Draymond suspended essentially. Let's call spade a spade. And that hurt us.
Did you get hurt in 5 or did you get hurt in 6?
5. Yeah. So yeah, look, our rotation was messed up already with Draymond out because we couldn't go small ball as much. It ended up being Andre would have to play the 5. His back was really screwed up that series. He was fighting back spasms the whole series. A lot of people don't know. He was probably at 50-60% health. And then, yeah, I felt like I was having a really good series that one. I kind of came with a mentality of like, I'm not getting benched again. Like, fuck that. This final series, and my numbers weren't off the page, but I had some O boards, big O boards, but it was more my paint presence. I felt like I'd blocked LeBron a few times in game 1 and 2, and I felt like he was searching for me at times when he was turning the corner. He was looking for where I was at, which is what I want, right? Because I'd either block his shot, I'd be there early, try to take a charge, or I just foul the shit out of him. It was one of the 3, right? So once I kind of got out of that lineup, it then put a lot of pressure on Festus to play more minutes, and it felt like LeBron just started getting in the paint at ease, especially game 6 and 7, and yeah, I felt like, look, I wouldn't have changed a series in game 6 or 7 completely, but I think just having that presence out there for 20 minutes definitely would have helped. But the Draymond thing just threw our lineup out, and then you come back to game 6. Now lineup's changed again, even though Draymond's back. I'm out. The momentum shifted, and you got to give Cleveland credit because they stole it. They definitely stole that series, and you give them credit because we tried. It was a late game. Kyrie hit a big shot, but there were a lot of things that kind of went against us, and we couldn't bounce back from that.
What's the feeling like? The helpless feeling like? Like the year before, you were healthy. They just chose to go a different way lineup wise, right? But now you're not healthy, so you can't physically be out there. And you were playing. What's that feeling like emotionally?
That was horrible, just because it was the championship year, and it was just more from the point of like, from an individual point of view, I was having a series. Like I was out blocking 2 or 3 shots a game and rebounding well, and I just felt like I was playing well. As it all came together for me. But then not only that, it was an injury that I couldn't take an injection for. And if it was something I could shoot up with cortisone or a painkiller and keep playing, it was like my knee was screwed. Like I was out 6 weeks, barely made the Olympics, which was 3 or 4 months later. And that was more the frustrating thing. There was nothing I could do, and just had to kind of be a cheerleader from the locker room, essentially.
But that was your last game as the Warrior too, right?
Yeah. Oh no, came back. But yeah, in that era till KD came, yeah, obviously, and then came back for that little retirement ceremony a couple of seasons ago. Okay,
so that season's done. You're injured, and the free agency thing starts, and they go and get KD. My personal opinion of it was because as you pointed out, like Harrison Barnes, remember how many open looks he had that series? He didn't make them, right? And so the idea was like, as much as you guys were ahead of the league with playing small, people were starting to catch up. And I think you guys did need KD. I don't know if KD was the right fit, but I do feel like you needed him. But what did you think of the KD move when it happened? And you're sitting there, it pops up on your phone. What you think?
I kind of knew it was in the works for a long time. I mean, I had heard from some people that was being discussed during the season, before the reported Draymond stuff. I think it was. I heard around New Year's there was a potential meeting. I think in that season around New Year's Day, somewhere around there. So I think it was discussed. Heard rumblings, but look, if I'm the GM, I make that move all day. Like I'm not pissed at the Warriors. Like, I had some salary holds on my last year of the deal was 12, 13 million. So then I was the odd man out. I had to move. And You bring in KD, you get that opportunity, you do it all day. And it is what it is. It got him 2 more championships.